Hello, the purpose of this demonstration is to show the new user scoring feature inside Foglight Experience Viewer and to give an example of how to use that feature. So I'm going to begin by logging into the Foglight Experience Viewer, and then what we want to do is go to our Configure Hit Analysis menu. Now, as of version 5.5.8, we have a new type of filter inside Foglight Experience Viewer, and it's called a session filter. And this is what we're going to use to do the user session scoring. So if I pop open the session filters today, you can see I have one defined called Score Sessions. Let me just walk quickly through these filters and what they do. If you're familiar with transaction filters or hit filters, you'll see a lot of similarities in here. When I create sessions, I'm going to say score, I'm going to call it Score My Session. And what we're able to do in the beginning, just like a hit filter or a transaction filter, we can have certain match conditions. Now the condition I want to add here is going to be one where I would pick out either sessions originating from a certain city, sessions having a certain amount of hits or a certain amount of pages in them with a certain client IP. So what I can do is I can really filter out. Now more often than not, we suspect that people are just going to apply these session filters to every session, especially in the case like we're talking about now for user session scoring. We can go further and we could actually set the status on a session by applying an error condition here. So if we might say, let's set the session status to error if we see more than 5 HTML warnings, or if we see a certain response time exceeded. Some things you can do in one of these new session filters. I can also add execute certain scripts, and these will be Groovy scripts that you can execute. I create new custom fields that would be placed at the session level, or I could also add new metrics. And the metrics this is the one I'm going to demonstrate today. So the metrics that I'm going to use are, it's going to be a new metric, and this is the one where I want to get session score. So this will actually be cumulative session score, and I could increment this by a fixed amount, so it's going to increment 1 every time. But instead what I want to do is I'm going to increment it by a value that I determine. So I'm going to increment this by a script output, and what I'll be able to do here is choose my own script or create a new script. So if I create a new script, this will bring me into the script editor and let me apply this script definition that I can add. And basically what will happen here is you're going to set an output, and this is going to run once per session, and this script, these session filter scripts, will run at the end of a session, so on session termination. Now what I'm not going to do here, I'm just going to leave it at this. So that's a quick explanation of the filter, the session filter. Now let me go back and talk a little bit in more detail about this script that we'd use to populate this metric for a cumulative session score. I have a real simple example in here. So the scripts, once you define them, you would have them under hit analysis, and underneath hit analysis we're going to have a script section. So let's say you define your session score script and you want to edit it. What you would do is you would come back here and find the code that you've written, and then click on that, and this would edit it for anybody that's using this script. Now what I have here is the script type is a session analysis script, so we know that it's going to be applied to my session analysis filter, and it's set here to run once per session, and it's going to use this output variable, so the output is X. Now what I've done here is I set a variable in the beginning, and this is a simple variable called hits. And we populate this by getting the number of hits from the session, the number of hits that were equal to OK. So we only want HTML hits, so we don't include images or style sheets or JavaScripts. Just top level HTML hits we want, where the status is equal to OK. And I don't need the 0 at the end. So what this will do, this will get me a count of the amount of hits, HTML hits, that were executed by this session that we're executing it for. Now case 0, so this is saying if the hit is equal to 0, give a score of 0. If the hits is between 1 and 2, give a score of 10, and if the hits are between 3 and 5, give a score of 15. And then what you're going to do at the end, I'm saying if I have neither 0, 10, or 15, then what I'm going to do is, either 0, 1 through 2, or 3 through 5. So if I have more than 5 hits, it's automatically going to score it with a 20. Okay, so this is only what you would do here. If you wanted to score it on a number of attributes, you'd have this repeated several times through the script, where we would increment the score based on those different attributes. The only attribute I'm using here is the actual count of HTML hits. Okay, so this is just, like I said, a quick example. Now, what's going to happen here is if it's, like I said, if it's 0, it's going to output 0. If it's between 1 and 2, output 10. 3 and 5, output 15. And then what I've done in the bottom is I've set a test case where I'm setting my session hits type OK equal to 5. Right, so that would do is it would make us fall right into this category here if we tested it. So, and then what I'm expecting is I'm expecting an output of 15, which corresponds to this this part of the case statement. If I execute my test, it says it's executed successfully, and I could see the results below. So if I go look at the results down here, the script completed successfully. All output variables match the expected results. So if we just want a variation on this test and make it fall into this second bucket here, instead of equal to 5, we can set this equal to 2. Now if we set it equal to 2 up here, right, our case would be 10. So if we set it to 10 here, we can execute the test case again. Okay, and then I have another successful execution. Now let me just give you an example of the failure. So if I set this to 15, which we know we're not expecting with this result, and I executed my test, right, then we get a failure, and then we can look below for the reason for failure. The script completed successfully, but there was a mismatch in the output results. So I was expecting 10, or expecting 15 rather, and the output actually was 10. That's just a quick way to test your script, and a nice use of the case statement so that it can be executed for the purposes of user session scoring. And like I said before, this would give it a score of 10 in this case. Would give it a score of 10 just for the number of HTML hits, but you can have a number of other ones of these, like maybe from the session you get the number of times it executed a transaction, or the number of times it failed, or the number of times that a certain transaction or a certain hit filter was executed, and it actually made an annotation on the session. Okay, so that's the end of this demonstration. I hope you found it useful for the new user session scoring feature. Thank you.